All right, now imagining a successful future from the Marxist perspective, we've successfully mounted a revolution. We've successfully gone through that transition phase of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Suppose optimistically we're now a generation into the revolution, and we now have an entire cohort of young people who from day one have been educated in Marxist socialist system. And they're now adults, and so the whole society, or at least the dominant number of people among the older people and among the young people who are continually being born into the society, everything then is essentially Marxist. Now we can talk about what Marxist education will be in a fairly pure sense. And I want to organize Marxist education under three headings, and there are and have been some variations among Marxist theoreticians and in the dozen or more societies in the course of 20th century history and now 21st century history that have been more or less Marxist. There have been some variations here. But the commonalities strike me as falling rather under three headings. The first heading is, for good philosophical reasons, a strong emphasis on physical education. This makes perfectly good sense. Since the Marxists philosophically are materialists, it makes sense that they would place a great deal of emphasis on physical education. So there's a great deal of calisthenics, a great deal of learning by doing, a great deal of physical activity. And a certain amount of this involves simply a matter of physical health. If the human being primarily is a physical being, then a concern with physical health is going to be important here. Also, the Marxists will put a great deal of emphasis typically on a certain amount of military training, and military activities are very vigorously physical, of course. The Marxist regimes, right, historically are in a world where there's lots of other political regimes in which they're in competition with, and so they're well aware that military might is an important part of maintaining one's position right in the world. And then, of course, most of the Marxists believe that physical labor, or a labor theory of value, or that the kind of work that's the basically productive kind of work, involves a great deal of physical labor. And so physical education that will train one for that kind of physical work is very important. So a significant amount of physical work, physical health, physical activity is built into and one of the three pillars of Marxist education. And if you perhaps have seen video clips or pictures in books from Marxist regimes, the standard kind of clip is the students at various points in the day or during the week all wearing uniforms, doing group calisthenic activities. A great deal of that physical activity, but it's everyone is wearing uniforms to give them a sense that they are not isolated individuals with their own style, and they're competition between individuals for how they look, but also doing the exercises as part of a group so that one senses oneself rather as being a part of a larger group in all of one's activities. All right, second pillar of Marxist education is economic and physical work training. The Marxists believe, of course, again philosophically, that economics is the fundamental science, the mother science upon which all the rest of society's superstructure is built upon. How we make a living in our society, as in any society, is the most fundamental thing. And so a major part of Marxist education has to be job training, career training. And so there will be a great deal of agricultural training, agriculture being a very labor-intensive kind of economic pursuit, and a great deal of technical training. Most Marxists believe in a kind of combination of agricultural training and technical training, and certainly at the early ages before we start segregating students into career paths, they should know something about agriculture, where their food comes from. They should know something about basic basic manufacturing and technological pursuits so that they know where the various articles of manufacture come from. And we're also looking as educators to see where their aptitudes might lie so that when we start tracking them, we can track some in a more agricultural direction and others in a more technical and industrial direction. But nonetheless, all students should have some basic agricultural education and some basic industrial/technological education as well. They should understand these things not merely theoretically, but they should also be able to do these things. They need to be able to do the activities physically, because it is that physical activity that is the source of value, and we want students to be able to do all of these things. The third pillar of Marxist education is a little bit more intellectual. Now, Marxists philosophically are not great believers in human consciousness. They believe that human consciousness, the mind, or whatever we want to call it, the spirit, is an epiphenomenon, or at best a secondary phenomenon based on underlying physical processes. But the Marxists, for the most part, do recognize that, of course, we are conscious beings, and what people think and believe to some extent plays a causal role in how they do act. So it is necessary for there to be some ideological instruction in education as well. And this ideological instruction then will be a certain amount of Marxist political economy, education in how Marxists believe we should think about politics, how Marxists believe we should think about economic matters, a certain amount of Marxist philosophy for students who perhaps might be going on a leadership kind of a track as well. And then also art that will serve a didactic purpose, or literature or movies that serve an instructional purpose in helping students concretize and visualize what it means to be a good socialist. We will certainly teach history as a series of lessons about the bad old days under various other kinds of educational systems, and so forth. So art, literature, history, all of it serves that didactic purpose of ideologically instructing individuals to believe in a Marxist philosophical base. So put those three together, right? Marxist physical education, technological and agricultural instruction, and Marxist ideology. Those three form the basis for Marxist education, both philosophically and in terms of how most, in practice, Marxist educational systems have been instituted in the countries where, to more or less degrees, Marxism has been the ruling ideology.